I've got a little poem that I'd like to read in honor of this occasion, if I may. It's fall to get your foot off the boat. It's easy to grin when your ship comes in.
Hey guys, welcome to yet another episode of the History of Aviation podcast, and I'm really excited to get into this one because it's an aircraft that I had no clue about till it was brought to my attention. But this episode is number 68, and it's the Martin Mars seaplane. And first off, I'm joined by Mr. David Rowe. How's it going, David?
Doing well. A bit cold up here in Bristol.
Yes.
Been overcast and windy and dealing with all of that, but otherwise doing well. Been traveling around a little bit. Got my wife back from Europe. She took a little vacation with some family over there and went up to Roanoke and spotted some planes in Roanoke and then brought her home. And so all good here, ready to go.
And also, as always, a man about town, Dave Gorman. How's it been going, buddy?
Well, doing pretty good. Things are moving smoothly. We've got a busy week at school this week and next week, wrapping things up for the holidays, but trying to keep kids focused. I'll give you a little secret, trying to keep teachers focused.
Yes.
It's a lot going on right now.
It's getting close to
everything
Christmas.
is well. I've been focusing more on Daviation than aviation lately. So have not gone spotting in a while. I'm really feeling a little left out, but I did reserve my dorm room for Oshkosh next year, so got that in the pipeline already.
Good deal.
That's always good. Always good.
That's very important early. Definitely do that early, right?
Believe me.
And Julien Martinson, you've been busy, ain't you, buddy?
Oh, yes, that's great. Thank you for asking. I really want to bring the best that I got to the industry, and so I want to create some airline storyboards for the next generation, for Gen Zs. And so I just want to inspire them a little bit about airline conceptualization, fleet composition, and that kind of stuff. So I'm working on some projects in that area, and so stay posted for next week with more information.
Good deal. Appreciate that, Julien. And as we dive into this Martin Mars seaplane, David Rowe, what was all the operations of this aircraft?
Well, this was basically the Navy needed a very large aircraft that could traverse the oceans. They were faced with the Pacific Ocean, which is very long distances and very few runways. And so they needed a seaplane that could get them across the ocean. So they went to Martin Company. Glenn Martin was known for his seaplanes, and so he took one of his designs, he mocked it up a little bit bigger. I was reading that this one's almost the same size as Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose. So it's kind of a stepbrother from another mother situation. It's big. It can carry a huge amount of material. It's not as big as the Spruce Goose, but this one actually worked. This one actually flew missions. The very first one had a twin tail, was designed. That was a Martin feature. It had a big old twin tail. And they had originally designed it to be an aerial battleship. It was going to drop bombs with a Norden bomb sight. It was going to have blisters on the side with guns that would move in and out. And so it was going to be this giant battleship in the sky. And when they saw that it was only going to fly at about 130 or 40 miles per hour, that's not going to last long in the skies against the Zero or any of the modern World War II fighter aircraft. So they decided, let's convert this plane into transport, and it became a great transport across the oceans because it had very long legs, and that's what they used it for.
Yeah, and that's one thing that was funny when Dave Gorman mentioned doing this aircraft. He sent a picture, and I'm looking at my phone going, is that a Spruce Goose? Because it looks like exactly like a Spruce Goose, doesn't it, Dave Gorman?
Well, it certainly is a large seaplane, and that was, they had some characteristics in common. This one was a few years before, and they built more than just one. But if you're not familiar with it, if you've never seen it before, which I knew a little bit about these planes. I saw one fly a couple years ago at Oshkosh, and it was amazing. And just it is not a fast mover, as David said. It's a slow, lumbering aircraft, and 80 years on, it's still not fast. But boy, it really takes up a lot of sky.
This was the prototype, and so they got it up and running and using it, and they ultimately built 7 of these. They had ordered 20, but at the end of World War II, they only had the one in use, and with the war over, they didn't need more, so they just said, finish building what you've got in process, which were 7, and that's what we ended up with. And they were used throughout the 1950s. I think it was 1956 was the last when the Navy struck it from their roster. So it worked through the Korean War and again, World War II. But then it gained a life after the wars by use for firefighting duties. So it's like Dave said, it's had 80 years of use with this airframe. And, the first of it was very short use in the wars, but the firefighting ability of it became what it's going to be lastingly known for.
Gotcha. Julien?
David Rowe really hit the nail on the head because it was used for a lot of firefighting operations. This airplane can carry up to 32 pounds of cargo or water in firefighting purposes. And I saw some images online about this aircraft actually flying around in Vancouver, my hometown. And you see that airplane landing and taking up the water, and it takes it up to the forests, and then it opens up its cargo hold, and all the water dispenses, and it'll put out the fire. And so it's very agile. It's about 200 feet in wingspan with 120 feet in length, and was used for some military purposes as well. So it was a good airplane to have at that time.
Yeah, and that post-war usage, such as the firefighting, Dave Gorman, was there anything else that did post-war? Are they still around? What are we doing?
Yeah, well, so as Dave Rowe mentioned, it was used for transport and cargo. And it made a lot of runs across the Pacific from San Francisco and all the way over to Honolulu and back and forth, and set records for the amount of cargo in a single ship aircraft. It's a big, it's got a lot of room in there. Julien mentioned about how much water it could carry, the capacity that it could carry, and that's what made it such an attractive thing. Dave mentioned it was retired from naval service around 1956, and they weren't really sure what was going to happen with them. And in their late 50s, early 60s, folks in Canada who, dealing with forest fires and trying to find ways to battle the devastation, looked at these aircraft and said, wow, yeah, this could really fit the bill. So they designed a refit and removed, in some cases, some of the fuel tanks, outfitted, I think, 4 of them, Dave, is that correct? For firefighting operations?
Yes, there were 4 that were actually used for firefighting.
Yeah, and so there were a couple accidents and crews that were lost, unfortunately. Over in the Vancouver area, there was one that crashed and hit a Mount Moriarty, I think is the name of it, over near Nanaimo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, Julien.
Yeah, that's good.
I've actually been to Nanaimo years ago, so I've seen that area. It's really pretty, and I can't imagine, what it would feel like to be seeing a fire, but then seeing this great, huge aircraft coming in with that load and dumping that out and making passes must have really instilled a particular kind of pride in Canadians, because this aircraft had no use in the U.S. anymore, and most of its operations were done in Canada. Derrick, you asked about survivors. There are 2 that are left, and they one of them stopped, I think, flying operationally in firefighting around 2007. It was still being maintained, but just it's expensive to fly, and it was something that The planes had been through a lot of stresses and things like that. And so it was just being kind of maintained, but not flown often. There were newer aircraft that were coming online that were easier to operate, more efficient, and taking the place of the Mars water bombers. But the Hawaii Mars continued to fight fires up until the 20 teens. And then I guess around 2016, around the time that I saw it at Oshkosh, that was the last time that it flew and I think fought any fires at that point. Just in the last few months, in fact, in the last couple of months, the Hawaii Mars was flown to a museum, and the second one is at the Philippine Mars, Dave.
Correct.
This week, maybe on its way to Arizona of all places. So they're doing some test taxiing and some short hop test flights. I was looking today to see what the latest is, but we should be able to see that live on YouTube. It'll be quite an event when the last Mars takes to the air for the final time and flies over some familiar places on the U.S. West Coast after leaving Canada, and then makes its way to Arizona for its last flight forever.
Yeah, let's talk about that water dropping. I've got some interesting stuff here. The capacity of this Mars bomber is 7,200 gallons, which is approximately, what is it? It covers an area up to 4 acres when it drops the water. And the amazing part is it scoops the water up as it floats on the water. So it comes in, lands on a bay or a river or whatever's deep enough to handle that size aircraft, and it can scoop up 27 tons of water in 22 seconds.
Wow.
So that is a massive amount of water that's being pushed into this airplane, not to mention the fact that it's flying, 120, 30 miles an hour and takes off with that in its belly. And then drops it on a 4-acre area and can do that over and over. It also has a 600-gallon foam concentrate that it injects into the water to help it suppress the fire. So that's one of the things that helps it work is that combination of water and foam. And Dave, you were talking about the plane that crashed up near Vancouver. One of the speculations as to why that aircraft crashed is because it went in on a run and the water did not release. It didn't come out of the aircraft, and it was too heavy to rise above the terrain and crashed into the local terrain. Unfortunately, losing 4 crew members there. So just some error in the system didn't work, and the water didn't come out, and the plane was too heavy to rise quickly enough to get away. Unfortunately.
So it proved to be more of a firefighter than a bomber. Would that be safe to say?
Oh yeah, most definitely. It was never, as far as I know, it never was used as a bomber. That was its original intent. That's what the Navy had hoped for. But practically, the aircraft wasn't going to work. There were other better B-17s, B-24s, Mitchells and Marauders, and so on and so forth. There are all kinds of aircraft out there that were better suited to the bombing role. This plane, basically, it was a troop transport. I think 300 people was its maximum, 330. Just a lot of people. It could carry up to 100 wounded back and forth. So, I mean, it was just great for that transport because it's just a giant interior space. And so, yeah, it was never was going to make it as a bomber.
So when you're go ahead.
I was going to say, Derrick, yeah, it came online right around that great transitional time, towards the end of World War II, coming into Korea, where you've got new materials, new, swept wings, better engines, jet engines, all these developments happening. And, the Mars kind of looks like it's out of a time warp. I mean, it really is dated. And you'll never look at it and say, what a sleek plane and what a fast thing. But for what it was designed to do in terms of carrying big loads and doing it efficiently, not fast, but efficiently and effectively. It was great, but I don't think that. I mean, they only built 7 of them, right, Dave?
Yes.
Yeah, so it wasn't a major part of any huge operational need, but the need developed, the need was there, and so not having to armor the plane and weaponize it, saved weight and saved trading and saved a lot of effort, focusing on transporting like it did after the war, towards the end of the war, and then after World War II. That's probably why they survived as long as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Julien, you guys had the fire up the fires up in Canada that actually brought smoke down our way. Did you actually see one of these seaplanes operating, or was it something you saw online?
It's the image was an image I saw online. Of course, online there's lots of availability. Particularly, I'm in the Toronto area, and I spend most of my time in a basement suite, so I don't see a lot of airplanes from my specific location. But unfortunately, no, I didn't see one specifically myself. But I'm fascinated by the design of these aircraft. And for its era, the engineers that came together and designed that aircraft in order to be a firefighting aircraft was a very unique design concept to fulfill a very unique purpose. And I always want to inspire the next generation, with all the technology that they have at their fingertips and all the progress. It'll be just a fascination to see what they're going to come up with in the next 10 years for firefighting and other aviation tasks that we don't know of.
Yeah, and carrying that much water, David Rowe, let's talk about these engines on this bad boy.
Well, it's actually had 2 different engines from what I've been reading. It was originally designed with the Wright R3350 duplex Cyclone, which is 18 cylinders. Power ranged from 2,200 to 3,700 horsepower each. They were used throughout World War II. They were used on the B-29 Superfortress, the B-32 Dominator. It was used on a Sky Raider, Douglas DC-7, the Flying Boxcar. The Bearcat actually used one of these. Probably the most famous plane it was used on was the Lockheed Constellation. So very reliable engine, very good. Well, in the process of their development, they created a JRM-2 version of the aircraft, and that one was an uprated version. This one had a Pratt & Whitney R4360 Wasp Major. It is 28 cylinders, 4 rows, and it's got a twist in it, so each cylinder head gets a little air. And interestingly, they call it a corn cob because it looks like corn cob the way the engine is built. It's just massive. It's huge. It produces about 4,300 horsepower. So very, very powerful. It was used on the Boeing 377 Stratocruiser, the Stratofreighter, is even used on the upgraded Superfortress. It was on Howard Hughes' Spruce Goose. So it was a very huge, large engine and powered a pretty good airplane.
And Dave Gorman, I love the idea of calling an airplane engine a Wasp. It's the best.
It is, isn't it? I was thinking about, with the engines because it actually came into play right now because they're the 2 surviving aircraft. One is painted red and white, and that is the Hawaii Mars. That's the one that we saw at Oshkosh, and it made its final flight a couple of months ago and is now being positioned for display at a museum in Vancouver. I believe. Is that right, Dave?
Yes, it's
Sorry
what is the name?
Put you on the spot there.
No, I've got it here. What's the name of that? So Pima Air and Space Museum is getting the one that's painted in the dark blue navy style.
Philippine Mars.
Right, that's Philippine. The Hawaii Mars is going to the British Columbia Aviation Museum in North Sancha, British Columbia.
Are you
Sanic.
All right.
are you familiar, Julien, with those museums?
No, I'm not. I'm from the Vancouver area, so but when I'm over there again, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to say that the interesting thing about engines is the Hawaii Mars, the red and white one, successfully flew and is, like I said, been removed and everything, and being ready for display in Vancouver. The Philippine Mars, the one that they're testing right now, the one that was painted all blue several years ago, there was a hope that it was actually going to end up down in Pensacola at the Naval Air Museum down in Pensacola years ago. It fell through. But it had an engine problem. It had a cracked engine. And so they removed an engine from Hawaii Mars because it didn't need it anymore and brought it back to Philippine Mars and replaced the engine so it could continue with its test flights as it gets ready to for the ferry flight down to Arizona.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I watched that Hawaii Mars video went live when the snowbirds were flying with it, and they were all off its wings, and it's flying over the bay there, and it was just a great scene. And hopefully they'll do the same thing with the Philippine Mars, and we'll get to see it as it makes its final flight. Because once it lands, we're not going to see these Mars planes fly anymore.
Well, it's the end, certainly, of an era in terms of large flying boats like this.
Absolutely.
Nothing comparable that still flies. The CL-215s, I believe, are what they call that Canada flies. That are scoopers. They're twin engines.
Yes.
Much smaller. So
much smaller.
Nothing quite like this. I know, and I was trying to remember. Japan built a large seaplane, I think, called the Emily. And there's one of those that is on outdoor display in Japan, and it's about, it looks to me, seems to be about the same size as this. Germany had some large seaplanes. I mean, it was a thing. It was a real, it was a way to extend your reach. And we had other large seaplanes that we built, some more successful than others. The jet seaplane I always thought was pretty cool.
Yes,
that we built, but it is a very soon to be a thing of the past, and so I would love to get over there to see it fly. But I'm sure, like all of us on this podcast and most of our listeners, we'll just have to do the best we can and watch it on YouTube.
Absolutely. Just to give you an idea of how big this plane is when it lands on the water, it's roughly the size of the early 747s. I don't think it's as big as the Dash 8s are today, but just imagine a 747 landing on the lake, and that's what this plane is. It's that big.
Jeez, you're talking about a huge body of water just to be capable of doing this.
Well, yes, exactly. It needs a very large body of water because it's got a long, laborious run up to get to flying speed. So, yeah, it can't land on something small. It's got to be something large. But, again, it was designed to fly across the Pacific. So you're going to take off from, San Francisco or, California and fly to Honolulu, taxi into Pearl Harbor. You're going to fly to the Philippines. These are all water-based places that the plane has got plenty of room just to land and taxi in, and that's exactly what it was made for. That was before, and as Dave had said, that was before we had turbojet engines, jet engines that can just fly there and land on a runway. This was, piston engine aircraft. They just didn't have that kind of range unless it was a seaplane that could land and refuel on the water and move on, or like the Mars with its huge size and huge fuel tanks, it could go the whole distance in the air.
I just checked some things on the Kawanishi H8K Emily flying boat. Wingspan about 125 feet, and the wingspan for the Mars 200. So
You're right.
Really,
Wow.
Yeah, much larger.
Yep.
And before we dive into final thoughts, we're going to have a little trivia here with David Rowe. You need a second to get that ready for us, or?
No, I've got it right here.
The man lives for this. What are you
This
talking
is
about?
his favorite part, and it's my favorite part as well.
I've got several things here. All right. We've been calling these aircraft the Hawaii Mars and the Philippine Mars.
Okay.
Do you know why they are called those names?
B. No, I do not.
B.
Okay. Well,
Oh, now,
all
wait
right.
a minute. What the other ones were Caroline Mars.
Yeah, Hawaii Mars, Marianas Mars, Philippine Mars, Marshall Mars, Caroline Mars, which we didn't mention. There were actually 2 Hawaii Mars. The first Hawaii Mars had an accident and crashed on the water and sank, and it was scrapped, and they rebuilt a new Hawaii Mars. So the Hawaii Mars we've been talking about is actually the second. And this one is not to the question. The original prototype is called the Old Lady. But why are they all Hawaii, Marianas, Philippines, Marshall, Caroline?
I know what all those things are. They're island chains of islands. In the
That's
Pacific,
exactly right. They are all island chains in the Pacific. So that is where the names come from. That one took me a little while to find.
They were not Mr. Mars's daughters, right?
They were not that I'm aware of. They're okay. So we were talking about engines earlier. So these massive cornrow engines. Those engines drove a 4-bladed, 16-foot, 8-inch Curtiss electric variable pitch propeller through a 3.75 to 1 gear reduction. So a 16-foot diameter propeller. That's, a couple of people tall. It's pretty big. The interesting thing was with that new engine that they did for the JRM-2, the 2 inboard engines had reversible propellers so that the airplane could back up. It was easier to maneuver with. So that was a feature that they built into it when, to help it move around on the water. So it had reversible pitch propellers.
I just want to chime in real fast. 16 feet. The width of this room that I'm in right now is 12 feet. So that propeller is longer than the width of the room that I'm in right now. That's insane.
Exactly. Cool. It's massive. And there's 4 of them, not just one. There's 4 of them.
You can't hang that one on the wall. You can't hang that one on the wall.
There's no sneaking home.
No way.
All right. Did you know that these are like ships? They all got their names, which we discussed earlier. But when they built them from the keel up, and they were launched backwards into the water just like a ship. And they used a champagne bottle to christen them as they were launched. So
did not know that. It's a nice tradition.
I hope
you're right.
I hope that went better than the christening of the boat in Caddyshack.
Yes.
You scratched my anchor.
Now,
Spalding, get your foot off the boat.
Yeah.
David, these were built at the Martin facility in Baltimore, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Now I've been there. I took a little unauthorized tour, poking around and waiting until somebody told me, "Hey, you can't go there," because that's how you find the good stuff.
Right.
And I did not find the the hangar full of Martin Mars that were never finished that they hid away. I did find some Martin Maulers that were in pieces.
Oh, really?
Which were kind of interesting to see. But that the Martin history has the Martin Company has a long history of aviation achievements over in Maryland, and very proud history too. So as a former Marylander, I got to give them a shout out there.
Well, interesting that you mentioned unfinished, because my last bit of trivia is, did you know that there was a Ship 8 Mars? No. There was apparently one that an 8th version that was in process of being built, but they only built the nose section. And it was originally acquired by the Forest Industries Flying Tankers the original people who converted them into water tankers, and it was stored at the Lake Bomber base near Port Alberni, and it lay in the bush for decades. Just nobody knew it was there until Colson, the current owners of the aircraft, found it and put it on display in one of the local visitor centers. And the reason they know why they call it Ship 8 is because the name comes from several factory labels spray painted on the bulkheads of the unfinished section of Ship 8.
Always
Wow.
fascinating stuff right there. And as we jump into final thoughts, Julien Martinson, what do you have for us on your final thought to the Martin Mars seaplane?
Well, the Martin Mars seaplane was really a legendary of innovation of that time, and it really speaks clearly to the next generation who are interested in STEM careers or who want some interactive experiences or engage in some community programs that will help them advance their careers in aviation. And this industry is so dynamic. Just recently doing a little research on pilot careers, and there's so much available if you wanted to pursue pilot careers or even aircraft interior design, which has progressed so much since the era of the Mars. And so this is some of the information that I'm gathering and making available for young people. So reach out, and there's a lot available at fingertips available for you to get your career going.
Yeah, and what an interesting plane. Final thoughts, David Rowe.
This thing is big.
Huge.
I was at the Pensacola Naval Air Museum recently, and they've got another Martin flying boat in there, the Mariner. And you just walk around it, and you're just like, this thing is huge. It floated on the water. The Mars was bigger, twice as big.
Wow.
And I'm just like, this is just, it's hard to fathom just how big this plane is and the work that it was capable of doing. And, thank goodness, Glenn Martin put it together and put it out there, because it's, 80-year legacy, and it will not be soon forgotten.
Definitely, for sure. Dave Gorman, final thoughts on the Martin Mars seaplane.
Well, I count myself among the fortunate to have actually been able to see one fly, and knowing that it was not on a mission to put out fires made it where I could enjoy it a lot more and not have the that knowledge, I suppose. But it was it made a couple of passes at Oshkosh, and it did some water drops, simulated firefighting, which was just fascinating to see. And as Julien mentioned quite a little while ago, the capacity for that drop was incredible. So it was a cool, dramatic picture that you could take. It was fantastic. It's a cool plane, one that I did not know a lot about until I saw one, and it's just been fascinating to learn more and hear this conversation. So thanks, guys, for all your work.
Do you have something to say, Julien?
Oh, yes. As part of my flight attendant program years ago, we were invited to do a walk around the 747. And so David Rowe mentioned that it was a very big airplane. And somehow I got separated from my group when I went through these double doors. It says employees only. I walked down the corridor, and I ended up in the hangar where this aircraft was parked. I'm just walking around with my little knapsack and looking at this, but it was a massive aircraft if you make a comparison. And so I can just imagine how huge this airplane was. And just the size of it is gigantic. And the space for it to land and take off, you really need to select a very big landing area so that you can maneuver this aircraft safely. So, yeah, that was just a little tidbit of information about that. Back to you, Derrick.
Definitely.
We got another unauthorized tour on our hands here.
A lot of unauthorized touring, Shay. I've noticed that. Not sure what that's about. But David Rowe, so the other day, a friend of mine was here, and we were watching a ball game, which I had zero interest in, and he mentioned something. About the Coast Guard, And I said, have you ever heard of the Dolphin, the helicopter, the Dolphin? And he's like, no, I haven't. I'm like, well, David Rowe has one on Aerophile. So I flipped my laptop open. We go to Aerophile, and we were there for 2 hours.
Well, funny you mention it. There was a Dolphin that flew through Tri-Cities Airport last week that I just finished filming, and I'm in the process of editing a new video of a Dolphin. A little hint, come Christmas Day, there might be a Dolphin video in your future. So just be on the lookout for that on the Aerophile YouTube. I've got several Dolphins in my library.
I knew you'd had a Dolphin, and I told him, I'm like, oh, and I'd get my laptop, and he's like, what's that? Wait a minute, what's that? And we just keep going, and we keep going. And then I actually seen some, I thought I had been all the way through Aerophile until that last Saturday night. We're like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't seen this one yet. You know, you got a lot of great stuff there. So that's aerophile.com, and the same on Facebook, Instagram, all that.
Yeah. Everywhere. Aerophile, AEROWEPHILE. Come check me out.
Julien Martinson, where can your website was where folks can mainly get a hold of you for some aviation career coaching?
Yeah, so there's my website is julianmartinson.com, and I have a career coaching package available, 6 sessions. And we go everywhere from exploring possible careers to identifying barriers to achieving those careers, and what the career paths are, academic paths, and the funding required in order to get various careers. In matter of fact, today I had someone reach out to me from Bangladesh, and he wanted to study a pilot career in Canada. And so I was looking up various pilot career paths for him. And so I get these kind of questions: what to study, where to go, and provide the correct guidance. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll toss your website down we'll toss your website and your social down in the description below. You can also find Aerophile and Dave Gorman. What do you got going on social?
Well, it's Gormania is the YouTube channel, and some aviation videos, and even videos of the Mars flying that I took several years ago. And once we get this posted up in our Facebook pages, I'll go ahead and share the video there, and maybe even turn one into a TikTok. I hear the kids are wild about that, Derrick.
We are on the TikTok. I'm adjusting. I'm growing with TikTok. I was always a YouTube guy. We're still, and speaking of that, so what we do for the show here is we break down everything into short clips, and I know you guys have seen them floating around Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. So there's always really great information and education in these short videos, and like I said, you can find those on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Did I cover all that, Shay?
Yeah. I do believe so. Yeah.
MySpace.
Yeah, we should. You know what? We should start a revolution and just go back to MySpace and start.
Take it back, baby.
Yeah, we got
Napster.
What
about Napster?
On OnlyFans. That's it.
I don't think we would get many subscribers on OnlyFans, but everything. We'll edit that out. Everything.
Oh no! You're not letting them off the hook.
No, you gotta leave it in there, man.
Yeah.
The sad part is he has access to editing this stuff. But anyway, all things History of Aviation podcast you can find in the description below. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we're all active there. And Shay, we're on Patreon now.
That is awesome.
So yeah,
go and donate your $8. We're gonna have all sorts of crazy stuff on there just for you. Everybody else gets the normal podcasting, but we're gonna have special behind the scenes things. Things like what just happened probably will be on there too. So definitely $8. That's literally, depending on where you go, that's a cup of coffee. You know what I mean? Oh. So go ahead and do it. It's going to help us do what we need to do and help us travel to where we want to travel and do live shows and things like that. I think that would be so fun.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that, Shay. I enjoyed it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Absolutely. Good plane. Let's hear
Likewise,
some
guys.
Suggestions, fans. If you have something you want to hear us cover, drop something in a message to us, and who knows, maybe we'll focus on one of your favorites if we haven't done it already. Derrick, what'd you say? This was number 62?
This is 68.
Oh my gosh, good Lord. All right, coming up on silver anniversary here pretty soon.
Definitely.
Yes, we are.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and also, too, Dave Gorman, we have a telephone number. You can leave text or voice feedback. So, which someday we hope to get some feedback and kind of maybe play that on the show a little bit if we have time.
Well, it depends who it is. If it's Bruce,
we'll delete that. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yeah, you can get a hold of us just about anywhere. I always answer messages, and we try to be prompt with our listeners and get back to them as soon as possible.
Your number's still 911?
Yes.
That's the one.
Call before you dig. For David Rowe, Dave Gorman, Julien and Martinson, Shay Jones producing, I'm Derrick Beeler. Thanks for listening to the History of Aviation podcast.